The evening at the Golden Crown, one of the most luxurious restaurants in the city, was like any other. Wealthy businessmen and socialites filled the room, waiters moved with quiet precision, and soft piano music floated in the air. Among the crowd, however, sat a boy who didn't quite fit in with the rest of the setting. His name was Daniel, the 10-year-old son of Billionaire CEO Richard Hale. Daniel was autistic, sensitive to noise, and often struggled in social situations. His father, Richard, adored him more than anything but was often unsure how to protect him from the harshness of the world. That evening, Richard had brought Daniel along to the restaurant in an attempt to share more moments together. While Richard was called away briefly for a phone call, Daniel sat at the table alone, his small hands fidgeting with a napkin. That's when a group of wealthy guests at the next table began whispering and laughing. "Look at him," one man smirked cruelly. "Doesn't even know how to sit properly in a place like this." Another chuckled, "Poor kid. Imagine being the son of Richard Hale and still acting weird." Daniel's eyes welled with tears. He didn't understand all the words, but he understood the tone, mocking, sharp, unkind. He pushed his chair back as if to leave, but before he could flee, a young waitress stepped forward. Her name was Emma Carter, a 22-year-old working long shifts to support her sick mother. She had been serving their table earlier and had overheard every word. And now, she couldn't stay silent. Placing the tray she carried on a nearby table, she walked straight to Daniel and knelt beside him. "Hey buddy," she said softly, her voice full of warmth. "You're doing amazing. Don't listen to people who don't understand you. You're special, and that's something to be proud of." The men at the other table scoffed. "Mind your business, waitress," one of them said coldly. But Emma didn't flinch. She looked directly at them and said, "Maybe you should mind yours. Mocking a child, especially one as sweet as him, doesn't make you powerful. It makes you pitiful." Gasps spread through the restaurant. A waitress standing up to wealthy customers. It was unheard of. The men looked furious, muttering insults under their breath, but Emma turned her attention back to Daniel. She handed him a small notepad and pen from her apron. "Here, draw something while you wait for your dad. You're safe, okay?" Daniel gave her the faintest smile, his tears slowing. At that very moment, Richard returned, having ended his call. He stopped in his tracks when he saw Emma crouched beside his son, shielding him like a lioness guarding her cub. "What's going on here?" Richard asked, his voice commanding the room. The mocking men immediately tried to speak first. "This waitress disrespected us," one of them exclaimed. "She overstepped her role." But before they could finish, Daniel clutched Emma's arm and whispered, "She helped me, Daddy." Emma rose slowly, ready to be fired on the spot. She couldn't afford to lose this job, but her conscience hadn't let her stay silent. "Sir," she began carefully, "I know it wasn't my place, but your son was being mocked, and I couldn't just stand there. If that costs me my job, I understand." The entire restaurant fell into silence, waiting for Richard Hale's reaction. He was known as a ruthless CEO, a man who valued perfection and discipline. Surely, he wouldn't tolerate a waitress speaking out of turn. But what happened next stunned everyone. Richard walked toward Emma, his expression unreadable. Then, in front of the whole restaurant, he extended his hand to her. "Thank you," he said firmly, "for protecting my son when I wasn't there." Emma blinked, unsure if she had heard him correctly. The customers who mocked Daniel looked stunned, shrinking in their seats. Richard turned to them, his sharp eyes blazing. "And as for you gentlemen, mocking a child, my child, no less, is shameful. You may have money, but you'll never have class." The men lowered their heads in embarrassment as whispers rippled through the room. Richard then crouched beside his son. "Danny, you're safe, and I'm so proud of you. Never forget that." Daniel hugged his father tightly, and Richard looked up at Emma again. "Miss Carter." "Emma Carter," she replied, still in shock. "Well, Miss Carter," Richard said with a faint smile, "I'd like to personally see that you're rewarded for what you did tonight. You didn't just protect my son, you showed him kindness in a way that not everyone can. That means more than any business deal I've ever made." Emma shook her head. "I wasn't looking for a reward, sir. I couldn't watch him be treated that way." Richard's respect for her grew even deeper. He had built an empire surrounded by people who only cared about money or status. Yet here was a young waitress, risking her job for the dignity of a child she didn't even know. "Then allow me to make sure you never have to worry about your job again," Richard said. "I own several companies beyond this restaurant, including a foundation for children with special needs. I could use someone with your courage and heart on that team. What do you say? Emma's eyes widened. The thought of working for a cause she cared about, and having a stable future, was more than she had ever dared hope for. I'd be honored, sir, she whispered. The room erupted into quiet applause, customers moved by what they had just witnessed. The billionaire CEO, usually portrayed in newspapers as cold and distant, had shown a side of himself few had ever seen, a father's gratitude, a man's humility, and a leader's respect for a brave young woman. That night didn't just change Emma's life, it changed Richard's too. He realized that his son didn't just need protection, he needed allies, people like Emma who saw his worth, not his challenges. From that day on, Emma became part of Richard's foundation, working to create safe spaces and opportunities for children like Daniel. She visited their home often, becoming someone Daniel trusted deeply, and whenever Richard looked at her, he remembered that single evening when a waitress knelt beside his son and taught him that true strength wasn't in wealth or status, it was in kindness, compassion, and courage.